Well, hello. My name is Lenore Rattray, and this is Stand Up 8, Episode 8. This is it, supposedly. In theory, Episode 8 is where it's all said and done, and it all makes sense, and everything comes together, right? Well, in an ideal world, this should be it. Everything should be done. Everything should have some decorative, symbolic bow of survival wrapped around it. And you would get a condensed summary of sorts of the entire horrific experience with the really very sad bad guy. But I'll be honest, wrapping up really isn't my strong suit. It's not lost on me that today is International Women's Day. It's March the 8th. It's 2024. And yeah, how exactly do you wrap up something that you're actually living? This is what it means to be a woman. This is what it means to live with stuff and keep going. To figure things out, I often return to a journalism mindset, the basic questions: who, what, when, where, mostly why. Why am I doing this? And to me, it's basically about the stories that have never been but need to be told. Simple, everyday stories. To me, it's powerful to understand survival and to talk about the power that it takes to survive. The power that we carry every day as we live with the impact trauma. So in my mind, I honestly struggle a bit with calling myself a survivor. I mean, I feel that in a lot of ways, we traditionally are led to believe that a survivor is some sort of person that achieves a really great feat and as such receives some great, well-deserved recognition. But I think we often put the survivor label on people, or maybe even adopt it ourselves as kind of a badge of honor, and that's just not the way I think of myself. I don't really feel that I did anything great. Yes, I am someone who survived something pretty unthinkable, but again, in my mind, I just did what I had to do. I mean, what other choice did I have? I did what I feel anyone would do just to stay alive. If that makes me a survivor, then okay. But really, doesn't that make us all survivors? I felt a bit challenged on this not too long ago when someone in my network posted something on social media that kind of got my back up. It was just a quick question. It was a sentence. He asked, "Is it just me, or is everyone claiming to be a survivor right now?" I was like, okay. It didn't really sit well with me. It was vague, it was leading, it was judgy. And I guess, this person wasn't a total stranger. And I knew enough of him to know that this comment was layered in a bit of cheeky judgment and was a challenge of sorts. I guess that's what got my back up. The cheekiness that I read into this statement was that being a survivor was something you had to earn. And you couldn't just claim it because you've come through something bad. And further, maybe I was reading into it, but that something bad had to be really bad. And somewhere in this rationale, there is some secret panel of judges that are selecting who can make this claim. This limited mindset just hits close to home for me. I've said it before, and many have said it before, and maybe we're not saying it loud enough. The fact is, you can't compare trauma. To go through trauma is an act of survival. A violation is a violation. Impact without support sinks deep. There's too many factors involved in this, and it's a big topic. What I can say is that I do feel that passing cheeky judgment on who is allowed to call themselves a survivor is shallow. And I'm guessing maybe the intention was just to shock and to create a conversation, those online fun back and forth things where People are misspelling words, name-calling, finger-pointing, and citing websites or experts to back them up. I don't know. I didn't stick around to find out. I'm never going to downplay the severity of the kidnapping and the torture and the absolutely unfathomable new reality that I faced in Camp Hell. 32 years later, it still is a survival story. I get it. But it's also intertwined with a number of other survival stories. We're all trying to make it to the next day. We're all trying to survive. In episode 8, I'm going to explore the concept of choice and what choice played in my survival, and I guess maybe in the bigger picture of everything. What role does choice play where I am now? What role do the choices we make when we take chances and explore the unknown? What role do they play? When my best friend Dawn and I graduated from high school, our plan was to take our first big trip outside of Canada together. We had plans to do lots of traveling after that, but our first trip, we had decided upon Jamaica. We were 21, and the Air Canada vacations brochures were glossy and filled with the promise of a magical, lush land with the promise of paradise. We'd never been anywhere like this before, and we were excited about this opportunity to just chill, be on the beach, stare at the white sand and the water, with a cocktail or two by our side, of course. We were traveling in Jamaica in October 1992. The kidnapping happened in July 1992, and although it wasn't the first thing that I talked about with Dawn when we were finally able to connect by phone after I was found, the trip did come up. I completely understand that you will probably want to cancel our trip, Dawn said. It was said in kindness, and she was serious. That thought had never crossed my mind, though. In fact, I vividly remember thinking, I can't wait to go to Jamaica to celebrate and leave this all behind. I want to live. So I said, no, of course we're going. He's not running my life. And that was that. I didn't give it much thought because, in all honesty, I was just thrilled to be alive. I was ready to go and do something amazing with my bestie. Life would just continue on. When we got to Jamaica, however, we soon realized that the pictures on the brochures did not represent the true culture of the country. The in-your-face scenes of poverty were shocking. The divide of the haves and the have-nots was unavoidable. From the moment you stepped off the plane in your long-sleeved winter wear onto a breath-sucking, humid, sun-soaked tarmac, to the non-smiling, suspicious questioning of security, to the unusually large flying bugs that looked like crickets crossed with wasps, crossed with, I don't know, an engorged ant of some sort, that flew through the open window of the rickety, ripped-seat yellow school bus as we traveled, careened down an unfamiliar, narrow highway, past patched-together houses towards our temporary hotel, to the daily hustle that ensued. It was terrifying. This wasn't in the brochure, but the fact remained, naive or not, we had paid good money to be here. This was supposed to be relaxing and fun and safe. One story in this adventure really stands out as something that taught me a lot about the power of perceptions and the influence on our actions of choice. We met with the Air Canada rep the day after we arrived at our hotel. She was Canadian. She had left Canada 4 years ago to live here, and she seemed perfectly fine with being in Jamaica, living it and loving it. She gave us some tips on where to go, excursions, what to do. She told us about the nightlife. She specifically mentioned a particular club that would be fun and safe for us to go to, and Thursday was ladies' night. I think it was called the Acropolis. We were in Ocho Rios, and it was a bit further into the main city from us, but we could take a taxi there. We soon met another Canadian our age. Her name was Sarita, and since we all seemed to have an interest in nightlife, we thought, let's all go to ladies' night together. Great idea. Until it wasn't. We weren't prepared for the Acropolis at all. It was loud. It was hardcore reggae. It was pumping. It was crowded. It was dark. And clearly, we were pretty much the only non-locals there. It was like we were wearing fresh meat signs in a den of starving lions, as almost instantly, our trio was surrounded by men aggressively wanting to be our boyfriends for the night. We could barely hear what they were saying to us, but repeatedly saying, no, I don't want to drink. No, I have a boyfriend. And just no did very little, if anything, to stop them from continuing to pursue. They touched us. They spoke in serious tones. They forcibly sat between us. And needless to say, we didn't last too long. Sarita was staying at a resort that was closer to the Acropolis than ours was, so we decided to go there. And it was still pretty early in the night, too, so we sat outside by the bar. Most of the tables were empty, and we could barely hear the piped-in top 40 background music. A few locals walked by, but no one was really interested in us, thank God. Until someone I'll call Danny walked up with his guitar. Danny was a local, and we soon learned that he was a bit fixated on Elvis music. He was amusing at first, but became intrusive, borderline aggressively flirtatious, and annoying. We just wanted to talk amongst ourselves, but Danny was having none of it. His flirtation tactics included him singing Elvis songs nonstop, over-complimenting us on our hair, our clothes, jewelry, etc., bragging about himself as a lover and continually commenting on how fine ladies like us, with our Canadian money, deserved to have a good time, and he was the one to show us how to do that here. We would laugh. In a friendly kind of way, we would continue trying to talk amongst ourselves. But once again, our gentle Canadian no thank yous weren't working. He seemed to be insinuating that we were rolling in money and desperately needed to have a good time. I was at least 3 Red Stripe beer in, and my 21-year-old, slightly alcohol-infused vice was coming out. And I said, Danny, do you really want to know what life is like in Canada? I'm lucky if I bring home $800 a month from my job. A loaf of bread costs $2, milk costs $4, my rent is $400 a month. This 2-week trip will cost me close to $2,000, and we, looking at Dawn, had to save our money for almost a year to afford to come here. And it's not all sunshine and happiness at home either, I added. I work in retail selling photo stuff to newlyweds like the ones you see running around. And 6 months ago, I was robbed at gunpoint at my job and kidnapped. He was silent. He was serious, and I still went on. The crazy freak that robbed me also decided that the little money I gave him from the store wasn't enough. As I said, he kidnapped me. He kept me in the woods for 9 days. I'm here to celebrate being alive with my friend. I'm here to celebrate that I am alive. And of course, I added at the end, and we're not interested in meeting a Jamaican boyfriend. Danny was quiet. His whole demeanor had changed. He was no longer Mr. Elvis Lives. He just kind of became human. He then had questions about our lives, real questions. He dropped the act. He seemed genuinely surprised that things in our world were kind of the same. Like him, we also still struggled to pay our bills. And like Jamaica, we also had bad guys and crime. Like us, his brochure of Canada painted a very different picture. This conversation created a shift. So we ordered more Red Stripes, and for the first time that night, we were genuinely having fun, Danny included. So much fun that we lost track of time, and it was getting close to midnight, and we suddenly realized, Dawn and I realized, we had to get back to our hotel. Sarita went to her room. We thought it'd just be easy to get a taxi from the resort in the front. Not so much. There were no taxis when we got there, and the one unhelpful worker we could find had no interest in helping us other than directing us to walk to the busy street a block over and hail one. Something we'd been warned not to do, especially as females traveling alone, especially at night. Anyone could claim to be a taxi driver, and anyone could take you anywhere in their car. So Dawn and I froze. All the relaxed, fun feelings of the night vanished in an instant. What the fuck were we going to do now? I can't exactly how far away we were from our hotel, but it was not walkable, not at this time at night. And then Danny walked by. He was heading home. "My favorite Canadian girls," he said before soon seeing that we were a bit screwed with getting a taxi. So he tried to get help from Mr. Unhelpful Resort Person, but Mr. Unhelpful to us also was Mr. Unhelpful to him. "Come," he said, walking out the doors toward the busy street. We quickly followed. It was noisy, dark, and extremely muggy. My chest was pounding. In what seemed like 3 very intense, overstimulated seconds, he leaned in a random car, said God knows what to the driver, opened the door, and said to us, "He'll take you back for $20. And we trusted him and got in, and thank the heavens he was right. There was no talking, no negotiating, no messing around. In what felt like the longest drive ever, the taxi pulled up to our dark, unguarded hotel, and we gave him $20, and we got out. Team Dawn and Lenore were safe together again. Overall, we both had fond memories of the trip, but we both also remember that we never really felt relaxed. For the first time recently, I also told Dawn that it appeared to me that she didn't enjoy the trip because I found that she was different, guarded, always watching. She wasn't the fun, let-loose Dawn personality that I knew, and back then, I didn't understand that this mostly was her reaction to the kidnapping. In the 2 weeks we were in Jamaica, we still did a lot of exploring. We went biking in the Blue Mountains. We watched cliff divers on sunset in Negril, new places, new experiences, new traveler friends. But pretty much the entire time, Dawn needed to be in control, and I was out of control, a little. Honestly, the ever-present abundance of rum certainly helped. I took chances. Dawn mostly kept me in her sight, though, although in this one situation, she also doesn't remember how or why I left this big outdoor feast and ended up alone in a sleeping area of a sailboat with a local Jamaican man because, after a number of rum cocktails, it just made total sense to me to take him up on his offer to see where he lived. I was only gone a short time, but all the same, no one knew where we were, not even Dawn. But nothing happened, and he never so much as touched me, thank fucking God. Was I in La La Land thinking, bring it world, I've been to Camp Hell and there's not much now that will surprise me? Maybe. Our reactions to traumas, I've learned, are not totally predictable. Life happenings as we move forward can also trigger unexpected related reactions and even change perceptions. So let's try and wrap this story up, shall we? Let's go back and get this girl home. Let's get her out of Camp Hell. Trigger warning. This is true crime and the impact of true crime. This is about a robbery and a sexual assault. This is true crime from a survivor's perspective. It's about living through and surviving those crimes. The details may be triggering for some people. There is so much to tell, and trying to determine the right things to tell is a battle all on its own. True crime through a survivor's eyes is probably a bit more feeling heavy and more in tune with maybe what's going on in the mind of the person who was violated. We don't see a lot of this in existing true crime. Not that I'm an expert, because I honestly don't really watch or listen to it all that often, but it's what I hear. And maybe why we don't is related to the pain embedded in the memory of the violation. I've said it many times before, but it probably is worth saying again. Telling the story took years of self-exploration, along with guidance from a professional, for me to feel strong enough now to tell it without emotion. Without external emotion, anyway. But by keeping it inside, it made me sick. It feels good to tell it now. It's coming out of me if I want it to or not. When I left off in episode 7, we were on a path in a pretend I'm going to show you how I will let you go escape. It was dark. We were in Mosquito Creek, and it was the end of day 6 of 9. And really, I'll never really know why he felt the need to take me on a walkabout. I can only guess that this was maybe a random act of kindness, maybe. Maybe he liked me. Maybe he saw that making choices that weren't about hurting me positively impacted whatever we had going on together. But also maybe he was just a batshit, ego-driven, psychotic weirdo who wanted to push things as far as he could, and being in control on this little mind game walkabout gave him a sick thrill. On day 7, which was a Thursday, he still started the day the exact same way as the day before and the day before and the day before, etc., etc. Sexual torture of a broken young girl covered in bruises, scratches, dirt, and filth. His filth, specifically. And he still wanted more. I was mentally breaking. The articles in the newspapers were more detailed. They would talk to more people, and more opinions about who I was and where I possibly was were shared. Many of the people they talked to I'd never met. I remember them quoting one woman in the pub next to the photo studio where I worked who said, "I came in there often to talk about my troubles with my boyfriend." You know what? No. I thought, get bent. I'd never gone to that pub on my own. I'd never talked to her. I'd been there once with my ex from Calgary, and that was that. This person was confused and had never met me. But how would the media know that, I suppose? Anybody could say anything at this point. I was losing touch on reality. I was losing hope. It was a struggle to remain strong. I don't feel that I showed this struggle to him, but who knows? Unless I could read somehow in the air that he was in a mood to hear a story, I stayed quiet. I tried desperately not to say anything or do anything that would trigger his anger. I was seeing a comfortability rise in him. Dare I say he was starting to be relaxed somewhat around me. Or, if you look at the way these types of guys, the bad guys, are portrayed in true crime, maybe he really was this brilliant mastermind and he was just fucking with me, testing me, wanting me to mess up. Maybe he needed something to challenge him. I don't know. I had learned the hard way, though, not to. I think it was early Thursday in between torture sessions that he brought out all 3 of his guns and spread them out in front of me. It was newspaper reading time, and my hands were untied. But apparently this, to him, was the perfect time to clean the guns and give me a lesson on how to load them. Even went as far as handing me the small black one, suggesting that I hold it, and I feel how it feels in my hand. No, I said. I looked away. I said nothing more. Once again, I thought, was this a challenge? If I took the gun and held it, would the fight be on? Would it trigger something? And then what would happen? Would I be around to tell the story at all? Or would I be out here in the woods, a mysterious pile of human bones, featured on a future true crime episode, maybe? In reality, as the days progressed, the wrist and ankle bindings were getting looser. And I had to ask, was this progress? If I made a noise, not a loud one, not a demanding one, more like a small, gentle sound of discomfort, he would loosen them so they were just tight enough to hold me in place firmly, but not tight enough to make my fingertips go numb. These things mattered to me. And I guess this was progress. What wasn't progress was his perverted sexual obsessions. He was determined to do certain things to violate my body. He had goals. He had told me again and again and again, specifically how he wanted to violate me. And then on day 7, he achieved one of his biggest goals. And for me, deep inside, my light began to flicker and fade. I hadn't given up, but I can honestly say some sort of energy source died in me. And I thought, this really couldn't get any worse, could it? But it could, and it did. On day 8, he raped me again. He was angry this time going into it, and maybe that made it worse. He had returned from his morning grocery shopping in an agitated state. It was a beautiful sunny day, but he said as he crossed the highway in front of the stopped traffic at the Westview intersection, apparently someone was playing their radio loud enough for him to hear. It was a news report, and they were talking about me as a missing person. In the report, they mentioned that my car was found abandoned near the photo studio, and the police were investigating this as an important clue. "You lied to me about your car," he blurted out. "I just heard on the radio that your car was found abandoned a block away from your work." He had just untied me, and I was starting to sit up and put on my coat for warmth. He looked right at me, stone serious, face pursed. "Well, of course it was found a block away," I quickly responded. "That's where my mum lives." His face softened a smidgen. "They said it was abandoned," he repeated. "You said that your mum was using it." "Well, of course it's abandoned. I left it at my mum's," I said. "The media's making a story of it like they do. And like we've seen before, clearly they don't have anything right. Again." My reply came out much quicker than I expected. I hoped it was convincing, and I think it worked. All the same, his mood was still focused on violence. I had to fight hard to keep my face neutral, to stop from screaming, crying, fighting, anything to stop the pain of what was happening now, both physically and emotionally. Anything that would stop the fear of the possibility that this would never end. He knew this time he had hurt me, and as we switched into eating/reading mode, he asked me, "Why does it hurt so bad?" It was almost weirdly remorseful. It was too much. It was like he thought that somehow I would snap to and enjoy our time together, like I was supposed to just get used to this thing, this us, this together as being normal. I didn't have an answer. Well, I did, but fuck you, you fucked up freak. I have a fucked up jaw and missing tooth, plus cuts and burns and bruises from head to toe, and you continue to force yourself on me, creating more pain? I miss my life, you freak. I miss my mom. I miss feeling like a human, and that is why it hurts so bad. But that would not have been an acceptable answer. I made the choice to stay quiet, to live. Now, at this point, I could tell more stories. I could fill a lot more time about his thoughts and conversations and crazy things. I mean, it's all still there, but episode 8 is running out of time, and there's a lot. As I said before, this is a long story. I've scratched a bit, but there are a lot more layers. What's more important to me is the simple fact that I'm alive today, and the big question of this whole series is why. The who, what, when, and where are pretty much factual, but the why is the real mystery. Why do we survive what we do? At one point, an investigator in Ontario told me that this bad guy is circumstantially linked to 16 unsolved murders. I have no idea how true that is, but that fact stuck with me. It rips at my soul to think that other good people may have unnecessarily faced this level of violence. Their choice to live was taken away. He made that choice for them. It also rips at my soul that the bad guys that commit these crimes become the ones that we focus on. And why do we do this? From my experience of this bad guy, his weak, broken, perverse, lost, and sad backstory is all that he had. So why do we put them on a pedestal for acting upon these weaknesses, these flaws? Why? Why does their criminal behavior become a form of entertainment? Day 8 leading into day 9 included the following: more rape, more torture, a 1-hour-long camera lesson thrown in for randomness, sodomy, an unexpected surprise encounter with a group of partying teenagers that came terrifyingly close to exposing all that was going on in Camp Hell, and then a lot of quiet time staring at the trees before it was time for bed. Weirdly, though, that night, that Friday night, as I fell asleep, I could feel a change. And then, right from the moment I opened my eyes on day 9, the energy still felt different. On this morning, he skipped the torture and the violence. I guess I should have seen this as a hopeful sign, but I'm not sure that I did. I remember being almost terrified. Something was up. The final thing that happened the night before was the teenagers who were on their way to hang out and party or whatever in the woods had interrupted one of the torture sessions. And after that is when the quietness hit. And I didn't know what that meant. What happened next is a story unto itself. It was July 11th, and this day will forever be known to me now as my day of deliverance. This day is when his choices backfired, and my choices gave me my life back. This is where it all came together. He went shopping, but was gone for longer than normal, and by my count, maybe close to 45 minutes. My shoulders and my wrists were aching from the bindings. It had never been this long, and I was honestly getting kind of scared. When I finally heard the crackling of the trees, he appeared. He was out of breath, and he quickly told me he'd kidnapped another young woman. I was ordered to get dressed quickly, and for whatever reason, I was going to assist him with the kidnapping. His commands were firm, but he still assured me that he wasn't going to hurt me, and I complied. I really didn't know what was reality right now. I was kind of stuck between some fucked up world where I was both adapting and shutting down all at the same time. I tried to grab some faith. I was grasping for whatever I could find, grasping for something that would tell me that this was the end. I don't remember those being concrete thoughts. I remember what the feelings were. I remember hearing his breath as he prattled and chattered. And I remember my heart pounding and bursting in terror. I remember seeing her the first time. I remember her looking at me, pleading with intense fear in her eyes. I was in her car. I was in the back seat. I remember sitting there numb, nothing to give. I remember the sparkle in his eyes, the excitement, the glimmer. If you could see a glimmer of hope in a pile of shit, well, that's what his eyes were reflecting. I remember him saying again and again, "Don't try anything stupid." And then followed by, "I'm not going to hurt you." But I remember him hurting me. And I remember hearing him hurt her after a long car ride, or what seemed like a long car ride in slow motion, all surreal, somewhere to a forested area in North Vancouver. I remember her screaming. I remember being far away, but hearing it so close. And then I remember silence. And suddenly him putting his hand on my shoulder as I'm face down on the ground, hogtied, gagged, saying to me, "The police are at the car. I'm on my way. I'm not going to hurt you anymore." I looked up and he disappeared, like the woods swallowed him up. They crackled and he left. I know now that we were in Mount Seymour. And he was right. The police were at the car. I remember them yelling and coming at me with guns drawn. They thought I was a bad guy. And I yelled back at them, "My name. I'm Lenore. I've been missing." It didn't register. But he put the gun down. I was still bound by my ankles. My hands were behind my back, but at least I was standing, and I didn't have a gag. But that was that. That was the beginning. I was free, and thankfully, so was she. And that was the beginning of another story. That was 32 years ago. I can tell this again and again like it was yesterday, because in my mind, it always was yesterday. And this is where I'm going to finish, with choice being one of the reasons that kept me alive. I 100% agree that in hindsight, I didn't make the smartest choices with a lot of things that I did in life. But especially with this situation, there's nothing that I question that I did wrong. I'm grateful to have lived through, and for whatever reason, whatever helped me along the way, I'm grateful for that too. Our choices aren't always our own in terms of a positive outcome, but positive outcomes are possible when we connect with others and they support us. I firmly believe that there is so much power to the fact that we really are all in this together. The bad guy got caught because he wanted to keep making more bad choices. That was who he was. If I look back on how him and I interacted, and he was getting kinder with me, and as ridiculous as it may sound, liking me, that contributed to me living another day, another minute. That's all that I had control on. The last time he raped me, he honestly seemed bored. I feel that he needed to find another victim. He's a predator. He needed his prey. I will forever be grateful for the police officer, the North Vancouver RCMP police officer, that put 2 and 2 together when he heard that a young girl had been taken from her place of work on July 11th and was in her car. And he made the decision to go to the woods to find her. He knew nothing about me. That decision, that choice saved our lives and caught the bad guy eventually. One last note, though, to wrap up everything from the very beginning. I talked about my car, my precious 81 Cutlass Olds. I talked about him wanting to take me in that car. And for whatever reason, from the very beginning, I lied to him about where it was. And that decision most likely saved my life. I have since learned that his MO was to take women from their place of work when they were working alone and have them drive him somewhere secluded in their car, where they would disappear forever and only their car would be found. Could have been a very different ending for a very different episode, but not today. Today I get to tell the story, and I get to make the choices of what's coming next.
As I recall, it was, you know, it was a huge thing for the North Vancouver detachment, because they had a scene, they had an active shooter, they had all of this stuff going on, right? They had no inkling that that was going to transpire in the course of the day, right? We were notified by phone. This young lady was kidnapped from there. The car was taken, you know, like, and then and the young policeman who found them in the bush just at Deep Cove, and all of this stuff. I mean, it was huge stuff, right? And so, yeah, we're dropping everything, we're going, you know. But I remember the thing that really stands out in my mind was this huge sense of internal relief. She's okay. Because it was unbelievable. This case is I think, in my opinion, a once in a lifetime kind of a case for a policeman. I mean, I'm sure that, you know, there are people in, you know, the large cities in the United States who have a far greater experience with that sort of thing, but for a relatively small town policeman, Vancouver, this was a big deal, right?
No, I've never had any support as far as that goes, but you know, other than talking to different people, friends and whatever about the subject. And I guess that has helped me to vocalize what I'm feeling, you know, or what happened. And to a certain degree, I mean, I haven't shared a lot of it, but, you know, how can you share the emotion that you felt during that 8 days of hell? That's pretty tough to do. I probably suffer to this day from it too, but probably not the same degree you do, of course. But still, you know, it makes it life a lot harder, you know, to
yeah, I don't remember exactly what we said, but I do remember hearing your voice. I remember talking to you. I can remember being in my kitchen at my where I lived, and I chatting on the phone with you, and just that, I don't know, just kind of that feeling of like, oh, like it's over. She's, you know, she's home. She's safe. And I just wanted to be there for you. So my focus was just on you, right? Like, how are you? What can I do to help you? And, you know, that's why I wanted to, well, why I came out to Vancouver to see you and stuff. So,
I mean, if that reality went on for years, and I'm sure in some families, it could go on for years. It has gone, or their whole life. It's like you never let up. It's like this constant vigilance tension of like, you know, she'll be found, she'll be found, she'll be found. And it's like Mona, my sister, said to me, she says, you would never have quit, Faye. And so, you know, I had that experience, you know, I mean, I even went to a dance class. But anyways, I'll get to that. That's when I was in the middle of a ballet class. And I put the phone numbers of everywhere I was at, and I think it was Fred that called me and said you were found. And it's a very weird situation when that happens. It's like, that's unreal too. I didn't want to almost believe it, in a way, you know?